Ever wonder what would happen if a person who knew barely anything about comics decided to absorb hundreds of Superman stories? Robbo is that kind of person, and that's exactly what he's doing on a new show called This Podcast Will Never Die. Listen and subscribe today. My love of the TV series Smallville is well documented, and there's one rewatch podcast that's always at the top of my queue. Zach Moore's Always Hold On to Smallville, which continues with more great Smallville and Superman talk now that their series rewatch has concluded. Listen wherever you get podcasts. In the 1950s, George Reeves embodied the Man of Steel in Superman's first television adaptation, from its gritty black and white beginnings to the kid-friendly color years. To this day, an entire generation reveres George as their Superman, while for others, the show remains an overlooked, underrated chapter in the character's history. On this podcast, we bring everyone together as we break down each episode of Adventures of Superman, examining it within the context of the series itself, as well as the larger Superman mythology. Welcome to another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Season 4, Episode 4, Peril by Sea, is returning guest, Rich Roney. Welcome back.
Good afternoon. I'm thrilled to be here.
We've been talking off mic and joking about this episode and Perry White's role in it for a long time, so I'm excited to finally be here to talk about it.
Yeah, I can remember watching this maybe when I was 8 years old, and boy, Perry is quite the polymath, quite the Renaissance man.
Yeah, no kidding. So let me give the quick setup here, and then we'll get into it more specifically. Smugglers target Perry White, amateur chemist, who is working on a top-secret project for the government to extract uranium from seawater. And yes, you heard all of that right. That's the premise of this episode. It aired March 10th, 1956, written by David Chandler, directed by Harry Gerstad. And our guest cast, we have Claude Akins and Julian Upton as our smugglers, Ace and Barney, and Ed Penny as the guard. So what we've been joking about off mic for quite some time now, to your point, is how Perry White is such a Renaissance man. And I guess this is as good an episode as any to sort of compile these various talents that the man has or past jobs. So all the way back to season 1, all right, we talked about the Crime Wave episode where in that opening narration, you find out that Perry had once been the mayor of Metropolis. Right, so
Correct.
Currently the editor of the Planet, previously the mayor of Metropolis. Now we find out that he's this amateur chemist. In an upcoming episode, the Dagger Island episode here in season 4, we're going to find out that he took a degree in law, but never practiced. So lawyer by training, if not by practice. And then I know coming up is at season 6, we're going to have Perry White, the magician.
Absolutely
Is
correct.
there anything else that I'm forgetting?
Give me a second. I think, from Joey, he's quite the prankster.
Oh, yeah, that's
right.
Yeah, we learned that. And the ladies' man as well.
Ladies' man, right?
Yeah.
And then he was also, wasn't there another episode where he goes, I was a pretty good crime reporter when I was
when he's doing the lab analysis or the fingerprint in it. There's something. Yeah,
it's new to me.
No, oh my God, I'm blanking on the episode.
There was something with the fish, weren't they? Were in some like sweat boxes or sauna?
Yes.
And but that's when he reverted. I'll solve this. I'll be the crime reporter. Or that's
one. Yeah, where they go undercover and all of that. But no, there's another episode, and I'm blanking on. An audience member can help me out here, and I'm sure they will. They'll write in the comments. But there was one of the past episodes we did where, yeah, he had been the crime reporter, and so he had some level of expertise. I think it was with fingerprint analysis or something like that, something along those lines. Because I remember at his desk him talking to Clark about that, if I'm not totally mistaken. But
I do remember that. I just don't remember the episode.
Yeah, I don't remember the context, but there was that too.
They might be two separate things.
Yeah. Although I don't know if we have that, then maybe that helps explain this a little bit. I mean, look, here's the thing. Him being the editor of the paper, him having been the mayor, and him having a law degree, right? Like journalism, politics, law, those all go hand in hand. I don't really have a hard time buying that. The fact that, as we learn in this episode, he, for years, has collected ancient scientific texts as a hobby, okay, right? We don't know what he does in his spare time at his house that he flies to. right?
Or at the journalist club.
Yeah, or at the press club where he's just chugging coffee at 2 a.m. He's got his private life. He does what he does. But where I hit a wall here in this episode, the notion that the government would have him conduct this experiment?
Well,
surely there are better, more qualified people.
So you did a tremendously, itemized checklist. But he's also good buddies with the Royal House of Burgonia.
Oh, yeah.
Because, he's got 20 years ago, they gave him some inside information. So he's good friends with royalty from Burgonia. And then here, this was two facets. One, this hobby of reading ancient texts and being so proficient, he can take the uranium out of seawater. That's not just reading ancient texts. That's, he had to be better than the run-of-the-mill scientist for the government to go, hey, we're going to ask you to help us for 2 months.
Right.
So this guy is, as you say, quite the Renaissance man.
Yeah, I guess if it had been the case that he was there reporting about this experiment that someone else was conducting, that would have made vastly more sense to me.
I agree.
The idea that he's doing it himself. Well, and also too, I don't know, I guess I could see it if he was doing this totally on his own. Like, this is my hobby and I'm going to try my hand at extracting uranium. I was like, okay. But there's government involvement. I think that's where I hit a wall with this, where, like I said, surely there are other better, more qualified actual scientists who would do this, or at least supervise him. He's by himself.
Yeah, Anthony, I absolutely track with you. If he were doing this of his own self-initiative, look, I want to stretch other mental muscles, or this is completely different from my job as the editor. If he did this as his own self-initiative, I'd kind of buy into it. But to have the government go, you're the guy we want, right? What, nobody else could read these ancient texts? And, I mean, they could have had the episode work just as well had it been, how many, in between seasons, well, all the seasons, but 3, 4, 5, how many crazy scientists have we seen appear just once?
Yeah.
And then kind of, the guy from the Mind Machine, or not Hadley, but some others. There's no absence of unique scientists.
Yeah, look, I don't want to belabor the point here, but it was silly to me, and it's the sort of thing. Look, we see this on television shows all the time. Like, this is not limited to this particular program, where characters will have interests and or skills that pop up out of nowhere because that's what that individual episode requires. Sure. And when it's an instance of, it turns out he had gotten his law degree and he's the executor of this estate in the upcoming episode Dagger Island, it's like, okay, like I said, that we can reconcile that a little bit more. But this just felt very out of nowhere. And like I said, I just feel like there were other ways they could have gotten there. All that to say, I do always like it when our side characters get a spotlight. So I thought that was cool. And we'll get to this when we get to the climax of the episode, but there's actually, I think, a cool special effect where you see Superman flying underwater to intercept the torpedo, where I was like, wow, like they actually went for it. And I appreciated that. So, there's some good stuff in here. And then the other thing too, which we'll get to, is just the stupidity of one Jiminy Olsen, where I know he's supposed to be this young kid and he's making mistakes, and I get that, but it's just like, come on. But I know we have to have an episode. I get it. Shall we segue into our breakdown here?
Please.
All right.
Please.
As we open, Lois and then Clark scold Jimmy for goofing around in Perry's office chair, make that Clark's chair, as he has been serving as interim editor for the past 2 months while Perry is off on a secret mission. I was really floored by the amount of time Perry's been gone. And it seems like Clark knows what's been going on, but the other two don't.
I agree with you. And I'm going to jump ahead. There was another episode, I forget, but Clark filled in as
Great Caesar's Ghost.
Great Caesar's Ghost.
When it seems like Perry's lost his mind.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen more where Clark had to make decisions as the editor. I would have liked, now again, I'm always falling back. These are 20, 25 year sensibilities. But it would have been intriguing if he were trapped in the editor's desk and had to make a decision as to whether to run a story or not. And there was a Superman emergency and he couldn't get away. I would have been more impressed with that once. I would have liked to seen him function as editor, like either talk to the police, "Look, we're going to run this story," or something like that.
Yeah, look, and when you say we're looking at this through a modern sensibility, that's true. And I think, we always try to be mindful of that, of not being too hard on the show and recognizing the context in which it was made, and they were pumping these out and they were on a really tight time frame and budget and all of that. At the same time, kind of in fairness to us, really, we're here to discuss these things. And I think these are natural questions or observations or wishes to have. And also, while we appreciate the context in which these were made, we also can't forget the context in which we're watching them. And there's so many other Superman stories we've seen and read in the interim, and we've seen a lot of different dynamics explored. So I think it's only natural when you run into something like Clark as temporary editor to think, oh man, there's more they could do there.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not like we hate the show because it didn't, but I think it's natural to be like, hey, I think there was more that could have been mined there. In our defense. Okay. Clark surprises them with the news they'll finally be visiting Perry at his cottage by the sea. So he's got quite the...
See,
yeah.
No, I didn't think that was his cottage. I thought that's where the government asked him to perform the work.
I don't know, because Jimmy knew it, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like when Clark said the cottage, I'm almost positive he said like, oh, his cottage by the sea or something. Like it wasn't... I feel like there was an element of recognition there, if I'm not mistaken. But I could be. It might have been a government facility. I don't know. But either way, they're going to go check in on Perry. Meanwhile, smugglers Ace and Barney spy the well-guarded cottage from their submarine. At the cottage, it is revealed that Perry has studied ancient scientific texts for years as a hobby and is using a secret formula to extract a form of uranium from seawater. I mean, anything else from that scene where we finally get the explanation that stood out to you?
No. Yeah, uranium 183, is that what it was?
Yeah, it's a special form of uranium. Yeah. They're very specific about that.
No, just the connection point between ancient texts and scrolls and stuff like that, and then modernizing it and going, listen, here's a new factory to produce uranium.
Yeah. We definitely see the seeds already in that scene of Jimmy being very impressed. And that continues as the crew is checking out with the security guard outside. Jimmy, still very impressed, vows to do something to honor Perry. Single Bound is a new podcast hosted by married couple Amy and Logan as they review single issues of comics. And if the title makes you think of Superman, you're not alone, as the Man of Steel is a regular topic of discussion. Listen and subscribe to Single Bound on Spotify and YouTube. Fat Moose Comics, established in 1982, is New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store. Moose has that rare old-school comic shop feel and camaraderie, yet also remains a welcoming space for new fans. Visit them in Whippany or reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. Whether you're an independent filmmaker or you just love movies, don't miss these New Jersey film festivals. Brightside Tavern in Jersey City, Hang On to Your Shorts in Asbury Park, and Round Reel in Bloomfield. Submission information for filmmakers can be found at filmfreeway.com. If you have children and are looking for a family-friendly store, look no further than Aw Yeah Comics. Visit one of their 3 locations, Harrison, New York, Muncie, Indiana, or Skokie, Illinois, and check out awyeahcomics.com for more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Aw yeah. Well, it turns out that something is spilling the beans on the whole operation in the newspaper, which Ace and Barney read and then decide to steal the formula.
But weren't there, to your point, there was some buildup where,
if it's about printing it, if it's accurate,
yes,
that business.
I mean, there were thematic themes they were trying to tell Jimmy about, do your homework, make sure it's accurate. But he got so impassioned, there was no common sense. Yeah,
I'll soften my stance on Jimmy a little bit because you're right. I think there's enough there where it's like, okay, you kind of see why he went down this road. He's so overtaken by this newfound reverence for Perry and what Perry can do, and this business about it's okay to print it as long as it's accurate. But at the same time, it's like even just to get into this, they have to go through this whole process, checking in with the guard. Perry's been under lock and key for 2 months.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was a little tough to swallow here. Clark, who did not approve the story, orders Jimmy to confess to Perry as penance. And ever the taskmaster, Clark directs Lois and Jim to be back from the cottage by 3:00. Now, obviously, this is an important plot point because that's how Clark then knows something is amiss and he called. But I love how strict he is with them. He's like, be back by 3:00.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what I guess we wanted to see more of, like Clark running the show as the editor.
Right. Well, and also it had been look, we didn't even see Miss Backrack or the other younger secretary. I don't think I've ever seen any other employee other than Jimmy or Lois, Clark, or Perry.
I know. We're coming up on the girl who hired Superman. I mean, we're going to get there shortly. And the young lady in that, the rich heiress, she ends up taking a job at the planet at the end.
Really?
Never see her again, though. Never see her again. This next scene was ridiculous. Somehow, Ace and Barney have hidden in the back seat of Lois's tiny convertible car, unseen. But they pop up to enact their plan.
Now, I've brought this up before, but this is a classic example for me of where the bad guys, are so well dressed. Claude Akins, I mean, he looked great in this suit. Nice haircut, shaved, clean cut. This is the sort of thing that did not condition me or prepare me for the real world. Just because the henchmen and the bad guys were just so refined.
Now, counterpoint to that, though, I get what you're saying, but I'll actually defend the show on that front because the bad guy doesn't always look like what you think a quote unquote bad guy is supposed to. And sometimes it is someone who's clean cut in a suit who you think you would be able to trust.
I mean,
so in that sense, I actually think maybe in some ways it was ahead of its time.
Because, good point. Because even like Clark Kent Outlaw, Jason or Stoddard was very well dressed as a con man.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Now, also in my notes, didn't Lois have a brand new car?
Yeah, maybe. I have not been tracking her vehicles, but
okay,
I wouldn't be surprised. She got that raise, and the car was more important than the hat.
You just stole my best line. Yeah. Yeah, but I do think she had a brand new car. But yeah, quite a delta between I need $10 for a raise to buy a new hat versus a new sports coupe.
Yeah. Meanwhile, a frazzled Henderson confers with Clark. We find out here that the cottage is on county property, so the police force is partially responsible for security, so Henderson's getting some heat over all of this. Clark doesn't seem too concerned about the national security risk here. I felt like he was far too flip in this scene. This is where I wanted a little bit of that. And even in the prior scene with Jimmy, there was a little bit more fire there when he's like, you have to go tell the chief what you've done. But in that scene, and especially here with Henderson, this is where I wanted a little bit more of that season 1 Clark. I feel like he was way too nonchalant about the national security risk here.
Yes, but he was more in tune than he was with concern for Jimmy and the bully of Dry Gulch.
Well, that's true. Yeah. They lock Jimmy up. They're going to shoot him. Stop messing around.
Yeah. Well, tell him not to eat so much. He'll be a smaller target.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, Clark, I feel like Clark's having a hard time calibrating the right response to Jimmy. Henderson takes off for the cottage to scold young Olson.
And even Henderson, he asks questions like, how could you let this happen?
Yeah, I know. And then Clark has a line about how I guess he sent it to the printer without his knowledge.
Yeah. Well, what
kind of operation are you running here?
You read my mind. Wouldn't there be like, hey, I don't see the editor sign off on this story. And you and I've seen it in your job, my job. There's some of your leaders and managers, they have to sign off on certain product before it's publicized.
Yeah.
So just the fact that before the printer started doing it, wait a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's crazy. Well, it's funny too, because over on Digging for Kryptonite a while back, I interviewed the group editor of the Superman titles, Paul Kaminsky. We had a great discussion, and it just made me think of that because it's like, yeah, there's a whole. It's not like the writer of the comic just like sends it to the printer, right? Like there's a whole process to go through. But in any event, Jimmy was able to get this out. Lois and Jimmy, with the smugglers in clear view in the back seat, sail past security. I love how the security guard is just like, oh, we know you wouldn't bring in anyone you're not supposed to. It's okay.
Come on in.
Come on in. Okay. This is actually maybe my favorite part of the episode. In Perry's lab, the chief devises a ruse and is able to lock Lois, Jim, and himself inside the safe. I love that, where he's like, oh, I got to give you the sample to go along with it. And Jimmy's quick to be like, what are you talking about? And Perry silences him and gets in. They're able to lock it from the inside. That I liked.
And as soon as I saw that huge vault,
someone's getting locked in there.
Someone's getting locked in, and I know who's going to bust the door open.
Good thing it wasn't Clark. I need everyone to be totally quiet for 30 seconds.
And this one had a light inside of it. Yeah. I didn't think about that till you just brought it up, but shades of the adventure in Germany, right?
Yeah.
But this one was clearly a bigger vault. Both of them did have radioactive material involved at different points. But as soon as I saw them, even earlier with the first visit, go into that, I said, okay, I know who's going to rip that door off.
Yeah, for sure. But no, I liked that Perry had the forethought to plan for that. The smugglers weld the door shut, though, and tell them they have 1 hour. But 1 hour for what? We'll find out soon. Over the phone, an impatient Clark speaks with the guard and then the arriving Henderson and deduces that something is amiss. Henderson investigates and discovers the trio locked in the safe. And his solution is to fire point blank at the door of the safe, catching a ricochet and dying instantly. No, I'm just kidding about that last part. But it's like, really? It's like, really, buddy? Just starts blasting away.
Yeah, they didn't have SWAT back in those teams, or, had hazardous materials unit or anything.
Yeah. But all right, there's that. Okay, finally, Superman arrives and realizes what the smugglers were threatening. A torpedo is on its way to the cottage. Superman flies underwater and intercepts it, causing a huge watery blast. He then orders the smugglers to surface and surrender. I was impressed with this.
And even the bad guys said, look, hey, we're gonna capitulate. This guy could crush this sub like an egg.
And I liked when you just saw him through the scope. Yeah, like that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is I didn't watch it usually I try to watch these twice. This one I got once. But where did they get the sub?
It's never explained. They're just like, they're smugglers, and the first time we see them when they spy the cottage, there's some dialogue between these two guys about, I guess the smuggling business is drying up a little bit. Like that's why they're looking for something else. But it's never explained how they got the sub in the first place or anything like that. But that's our big climax. Finally, Superman rips open the safe door. Perry, who has gone as far as an amateur chemist working for the government can go, is relieved his mission is over. Superman tells Lois she better get back to the office as poor Clark Kent can't get the paper out by himself.
They gave it a little bit of a button on this one.
Yeah, a little bit of a button. I also like when they were locked up in the safe, when Jimmy finally fesses up, and I feel like the chief was more understanding than you might have expected. In that instance, which I liked as a little change of pace.
Yes.
All right. That's anything else you want to say about this one before we give our rating?
No, I mean, probably just two things that impressed me the most. I was impressed with, for a while I thought, why didn't they just get a no-name be the scientist? But in retrospect, I think it had more meaning with Perry as the scientist. And as I processed this in my mind, because Perry was doing all of it, it made me think more about Perry. Though for a while, when I first watched it, I thought, well, why didn't they just get somebody else to fill in? They could have done the same story. But there was more urgency, more drama with Perry. And as you said, it helps round out him as the Renaissance man.
Yeah.
But then also I was impressed with the special effects. This was not dissimilar from Panic in the Sky, where they did the outer space. This was, I've written them off for recycling stock footage of him always flying. So, the scene flying or going through the water at super speed, and then also the drama of him when they raise the periscope and he's right there.
And look, if someone not familiar with the show were to just watch that underwater scene, they might be like, why are these guys so impressed? But for the time and their budget, again, the fact that they even attempted it, because I would have expected and understood if they just showed Superman jump into the water and then you see the explosion, right? So the fact that they showed him underwater is something. The thing with Perry being the Renaissance man, okay, like in fairness, I guess if this had been more of a thing throughout the series, I'd understand it even more. I feel like they get close. Like we're coming up to this Dagger Island episode, and I'll talk about it when we get there, but I'll include it here too, because I know you'll appreciate this. In the book Flights of Fantasy, the author, Michael Haidt, he went through the original scripts. And so in the book, he'll include like deleted scenes and lines where applicable. And in the Dagger Island episode, later in the season, when Perry reveals, I took a degree in law, but I never practiced, there was a deleted line from Jimmy who turns to Lois and is like, is there anything the chief can't do?
Really?
And I wish they had kept it, because I feel like that would have then reinforced, like I guess what I'm trying to say is, if it were more of a theme with Perry throughout the series, like, oh, he can just do all of these things, then I feel like it's easier to buy. Right. And then he's like, okay, yeah, like that's his thing. He has all of these hidden talents.
He's Reed Richards.
Yeah. So it's like we kind of get there. I don't think we get all the way there. And this one felt like such a stretch, but look, it gave us an episode. And like I said, I am always happy when he gets the spotlight. All right. So on a scale of 1 to 5, Great Caesar's Ghost, how many are we giving this one?
I'm going to give this one 3.
Okay. I'm going to go 2.5 on this one. I'll go 2.5. No, you know what? All right. 3. I'll go 3. You won me over. 3 for both of us.
Yeah, there were aspects of this that, we found some plot holes and flaws. But again, the personality, the submarine, I mean, this is, I think, the only time there is one much later episode with the bathysphere, I think, with...
with Mrs. Superman.
Yeah. But other than that, they really didn't do anything. I know you're going to touch on Dagger Island. And then there's the Jolly Roger, but there wasn't a lot with ships on those things. No, I enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
All right, 3 from both of us. All right, you're going to be back next week for Topsy Turvy.
I'm looking forward to that.
All right, good.
I'm looking forward to that.
Good, very good. All right, so thank you, Rich. Thank you, audience. Make sure you come back next week. Until then, as always, only Superman can do super things. This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Thank you. Another way to support the show and receive exclusive content, including the spin-off podcast Beyond Metropolis, is by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. My sincere thanks to all patrons. Please subscribe, rate, and review today via your podcast platform of choice, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media. Flat Squirrel Podcasts is also home to Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, a long-running weekly series mining Superman's vast mythology across time and media. Subscribe today. Another exciting episode is a Flat Squirrel production. Key art by Greg Schiegel and theme music by Dan Pritchard.